So, a quick show of hands. I was really worried. I was like, what does a 29-year-old journalist and researcher have to say to a room full of people who, a lot of whom I know, a lot of whom I admire, a lot of whom I'm still trying to learn from? And I decided to just talk about the world and about myself, but most of all about young people, because I've heard young people being sort of mentioned a couple times. How do we attract them? How do we make them interested in what we do? And so a quick show of hands, and please be honest, how many of you feel that journalism is in crisis? Be brave. Okay? All right, nice. Thank you so much, because my whole talk would have been lost if you hadn't raised your hands. So crisis, right? It's a word that gets tossed around quite a bit. You're not alone. Crisis seems to be everywhere. It's a word that pops up in quite a lot of headlines, quite a lot of searches. There's a book written about it, Journalism in Crisis. You see some headlines from The Guardian, from The Conversation, that journalism has become ground zero for the vocation crisis included. So less and less young people are going into journalism. A lot of the young people who do go into journalism choose other avenues. They choose PR, they choose advertising, which is horrible, don't do that, but they do that quite a bit. So here's a list of what keeps me up at night. Here's the list of what keeps you up at night. I'm not gonna read all of this, but I heard a lot of this being sort of said by a lot of our speakers, and if we were playing bingo, I'm pretty sure we'd have a bingo by now. So now imagine you're entering this world, but you're 20 years old. Right? Because a lot of you are quite seasoned, a lot of you have quite a lot of experience, and it's pretty horrifying. I work with quite a bit of young people, some of whom are here today. Please make sure to meet them. Please come and ask me to introduce them to you, because they're so brilliant and so talented, and they could really use our help, all of our help. But I love this. Why is it so hard to get a job in journalism? And that's 4 years ago, so that's COVID. Post-COVID, it's actually gotten worse. A lot of programs for young people have been cut because there's not enough cash to support these. More and more young people who go into journalism choose to give up. And it's pretty scary at a time when, as we heard, we're gonna need journalism more than ever. So on a personal note, this is a picture I told you about. It's a pretty nice picture, like very springy. Bulgarian people will know who this is. This is Bulgarian former Prime Minister Boyko Borisov, and right next to him is yours truly. We are very much alike, as you can say. So I entered journalism in 2017, when Borisov was pretty much tearing apart the Bulgarian mediascape in order to build up what was essentially a pro-government media machine, right? So I had to sort of work around a lot of the dilemmas that journalism, a lot older than I was, had to come up to and sort of figure out. So I entered in a digital newsroom. So print was pretty robust here and is robust, but it's owned by another oligarch who I can't show you because I don't have a picture of me to sort of match. I don't think I could ever get up to his energy. Anyway, and the international journalism in Bulgaria was also very challenging, like a very challenging task, because the country perceives itself as very small and unintegrated in the world. There were other challenges as well. Was I a journalist? Was I a citizen journalist? Was I an activist? And where was the boundary between all of these things? Of course, there were also the challenges of form. How do we create journalism? I was always very partial to like long form, and as somebody here said, young people don't have any attention span and they can't read any long articles, but seriously, is it just young people or is it all of us that's impacted by this changing of the way we process information? Other challenges, how was I to get paid? And I've been getting paid in some pretty interesting ways, all of them honest, but still sometimes problematic. There was the challenge of what do we consider news? So I entered in what was quick news, reporting, which was getting people what was happening, giving them that information, but people were increasingly unable to understand how all of these pieces of news connected. And that sort of pushed me towards a more like in a more different approach, which I'm going to talk about a little bit later. One of the probably most profound challenges was to the role of the journalist. Now, was the journalist going to be simply a reporter in an age where everybody was a reporter because they had something in their hand which could give them an instant access to any sort of information? Was I to be an interpreter? Was I to tell people what to sort of make out of information that they were receiving? Was I to be a watchdog? Was I to chase people and criticize them and sort of attack the subjects of my work? Was I to be a guide? Was I to be an arbiter? Or was I to be all of the above, which is very, very challenging? And I wanted to end on something like, we're both Geminis, the PM and me, and we're born only 4 days apart. And I'm not going to tell you who's in between us, but I encourage you to Google it, because they're pretty prominent people who are currently having a little bit of a hard time with each other. C and Mr. Trump. Anyway, I love literature, right? And I love words. So when I hear crisis, I go back to what the word actually means. And I think that gives us a little bit of hope, right? The true meaning of crisis is to choose. We are at a fork in the road, and we are supposed to choose which way do we go. Every crisis is an opportunity. Every crisis is a way for us to shake everything up, create what I call journalistic jazz, right? We are seeing journalism change so much. Influencers, content creators, somebody already mentioned, all of these young people who can get into the, let's say, legitimate industry, who are using these avenues that this provides in order to have themselves heard, and people end up hiring them. And when people end up hiring them, traditional journalists look down on them and they say, they're not the real deal. Why? Let's ask ourselves why. So, now you're not gonna work? Okay, perfect. So new decisions, new choices. Here's how I've handled some of the crises that I've been a part of. I've tried to adopt new approaches to beat and genre. So I've tried to incorporate OSINT, explanatory journalism, and infographics to investigate how COVID-19 sort of misinformation landscape turned into anti-Ukraine one pretty much overnight when the invasion began. New approaches to newsworthiness and re-evaluating this sort of divide between regional and global journalism with a very interesting podcast project that is about to be launched soon, so stay tuned. And I really wanted to say to you that what seems to us new is just the well-forgotten old. So there is a case, as a lot of our brilliant speakers said before me, to turn back into what has made journalism what it is, which is centered around people, centered around what is happening on the ground. Talk to the people who we tend not to want to talk to or about. Try to understand without judgment, because this is what makes journalism really, really valuable. So it's a decision time. I mean, the sound and everything about journalism is changing. And I think that we should take everything that's old and well trusted, but we should also be open to everything that's new and coming. And a lot of what's new and coming is brought by these brilliant young people who we don't have the resources to hire, or the media freedom even to hire. We should be uncompromising towards what isn't working, absolutely. In a new medium such as the internet, and by the way, I was born in the same year as the internet, so that's quite interesting. A new medium has always meant that something is going to change profoundly in big ways. So as everything sort of settles down and we're looking at these issues, how do we rebuild what we consider journalism? And how do we adapt it to what is going on? These are all questions. I don't have the answers, but I encourage you to consider them. Not that you haven't been. So how much opportunity do we really give young people? This is something that's very important to me. And how much opportunity do we give international reporters in an international media, which is overwhelmingly Anglo and Western centric even today? These are my questions. I hope to hear your answers, but I wanted to ask you, who is a journalist? And my personal answer is whoever does the work, and well, so thank you.